Good morning. Welcome to the Boulder Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. I'm delighted to be back after a little bit of a vacation, and also delighted that we have a very special guest here today. But we are going to start our service today with a piece of music, a video from Morgan Sherwood's marimba band. And I had the honor last week of being in an outside, physically distanced concert with her and her marimba band. And so in the spirit of this music and in the spirit of this service, which honors Black and people of color within Unitarian Universalism and the heritage of Black life, I'm going to invite you to really allow yourself to get into the music, because marimba is an incredibly embodied music. So we will now just start that video before, as our sort of prelude to this morning's time. So good to see you all. Glad you're here.
have another beautiful piece of music to share with you from our own Pete Wernick now, called The Ballad of John Lewis.
John Lewis was a sharecropper's son, sitting on his daddy's knee. He said, I'm gonna make a difference in this world. Jim Crow ain't gonna stop me, Lord, Lord. Jim Crow ain't gonna stop me. Well, his daddy said, you better watch out. White folks gonna get on your case. They'll block you every step of the way. Gonna put you in your place, Lord, Lord. They're always trying to put us in our place. John Lewis was a short and humble black man, but his words rang tall and true. And everybody had to give him respect when he talked about the golden rule, Lord, Lord. Freedom's just the golden rule. Well, he rode the freedom buses all over the South, marched across the Selma Bridge, and they fractured his skull just for marching for his rights. And the whole world saw what they did, Lord, Lord. The whole world saw what they did. John Lewis, he was a non-violent man, but he went to jail 45 times. Got elected to the U.S. House of Representatives, and he kept on fighting for his rights, Lord, Lord. Fought like a lion for his rights. John Lewis stood for goodness and truth, inspired the entire nation. And when he finally laid down his weary head to rest, they said he was the conscience of the nation. They said he was the conscience of the nation. You can talk about your heroes on the football field, the warriors that won us World War II. Now the soul and the lessons of John Lewis' life brings glory to the red, white, and blue, Lord, Lord. John Lewis was a U.S. hero too. Was a U.S. hero too.
Thanks again, Pete, for sharing that with us. All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Boulder Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. I'm Haley Anderson, and I'm joined today by Reverend Lydia Ferrante Roseberry and our special guest, Reverend Shauna Lynn Good, as well as our tech ushers, Don Price and Mary Stackpole, who help things run very smoothly. As I say our welcome words today, I invite you to shift into gallery view if you haven't already done so, and scroll through the screen so you can experience the lovely diversity of all those who make up our congregation, tuning in from a variety of locations and adding up to a fellowship that means a lot to us, especially in these troubled times. You are all welcome here today. And all the beauty of languages, cultures, skin tones, shapes, and sizes that come together in your uniqueness, you are welcome here. And all the ways you experience and express gender, you are welcome here. And the beauty that is who you love and how you love, you are welcome here. And all the ways you make your living and the places you are from, you are welcome here. Christian, pagan, humanist, Jew, Buddhist, mystic, Muslim, Unitarian Universalist, with all of the traditions that inform your spiritual life, you are welcome here today. No matter how long you are away, nor how soon you will return, you are welcome here. Whether you come with laughter in your heart or with tears, you are welcome here. You are invited to join us with an open heart, an open mind, a loving heart, and willing hands. We welcome you today. If you're new here, we're glad you're here and hope that even on Zoom, you can still experience some of the warmth and love of this fellowship. Each Sunday is different here, so please come back a few times so you can really get to know us. Now, please see the chat window for the link to our first-time visitors page. That page has a link to our visitor info form, which invites you to tell us about yourself and request info about activities, or email your contact info to Office Manager Carol at officemanager@bvuuf.org. Carol's address is in the chat window as well, and check out our fellowship calendar and Connections Weekly, which list many opportunities to stay connected. Our half-plate recipient last week and today is the Boulder County chapter of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And after today's service, you will have the opportunity to join us for a presentation with Junie Huston, the Vice President, who will tell us about the exciting local work of the chapter and how you can participate. You will also have the option to stay in this Zoom room for our coffee hour or join the School of the Spirit at coffee hour, the link for which Don will put in the chat at the end of the service. Finally, if you're new to us, we invite you to introduce yourself in the chat. We love to know who's among us. And now I welcome Reverend Lydia to make a couple of announcements.
Good morning again, everybody. So wonderful to be back after my time away. There's two important things to mention today. First of all, this week is the first anniversary of our Lifespan Faith Formation Director, Jessica Lakeman. So it's a year that's been quite eventful. Nobody could have imagined the building delays, the staff changes, and even the pandemic to deal with. And Jessica, of course, has risen to every challenge that's been before her with energy and creativity. And for those of you who've gotten to work with her closely, she is a real joy to work with. So we're grateful to have Jessica with us. I'm not sure I see her on screen or not, I can't tell. But why don't we unmute and share our praises for her for just a moment, and then she can.
Woohoo!
Thank you, Jessica.
We're so happy to have you.
Jessica.
There we go. And also today, it is my pleasure and actually honor to introduce my dear friend and colleague, Reverend Shauna Lyngood. We met the first week of seminary, 1995, right, Shauna? Oh my God. She was straight out of college, and I remember her as feeling so clear about her calling while I felt like I was shaking in my boots. She was far more together than I ever was at 22. I was very impressed with her from the first time I met her. And we've remained friends ever since, and we're now closer than ever as we're part of a women's collegial group that meets regularly. Shauna serves as the co-minister of the First Unitarian Church of Victoria, British Columbia. So she's here with us an hour earlier, and she serves there along with her wife, Melora Lyngood. Shauna's also served congregations in Madison, Wisconsin, and Washington, D.C., and she has just completed 8 years, serving on the Ministerial Fellowship Committee, which is a huge job and an incredibly valuable thing to do for our denomination, as they are the credentialing body for ministers in formation. She was also the chair of that committee for a year. So Shauna, I'm looking at you now in your little screen, your little box. I'm just delighted and grateful to have you here with us, and thankful for all you've brought to the denomination in your years serving us. So welcome. We're going to do our chalice lighting now. So if you have a chalice at home, you can light it with me as I light our fellowship chalice. And so we know where all the chalices are. You can place in the chat, chalice lit in, and the name of your town. Oops, matches. We light this chalice for the warmth of love, the light of truth, and the energy of action. And now I invite Shauna to join us.
There we go. Took me a minute to be able to unmute. It's wonderful to be with all of you this morning from beautiful, as Lydia said, from British Columbia. It's one of the amazing things of a pandemic that you can Zoom into anywhere to share worship with all kinds of wonderful people. So it's wonderful to be virtually in Colorado this morning. I would love to be staring at the Rocky Mountains this morning with all of you. This morning's message and worship service is focused on really the next frontier, speaking of mountains and frontiers, the frontier of a more inclusive Unitarian Universalism and what it might look like to fully welcome people who look like me into our worship, into our decision-making, into our lives as communities, to welcome music and thoughts and disagreements and all of the things that communities bring, not just the beauty, but the messiness too. Langston Hughes, one of my favorite heroes, wrote an essay a long time ago about Negro artists. It was called Negro Artists and the Racial Mountain. And he said, we know, he was speaking about Black folk, we know that we are beautiful and ugly too. And we human community, we know that we are beautiful and sometimes ugly too. And so this morning, let us lean toward the beauty in our world, which so often points out what is ugly, what is different between us, and sees it as something by which to pull us apart. Let us instead see our differences this morning as something that might bring us together. Let us honor the beauty in our diversity, and let us envision a Unitarian Universalism in which all people, especially Black and brown people, are fully welcome at the table of beloved community. Come, let us worship together. And we're going to begin our worship this morning by sharing in a song, the hymn, There's a River. And you will see the hymn on your screen and be able to sing along at home. Though you are muted, know that we hear your outpouring of voice and spirit as you join in this hymn.
There's a river flowing in
Beautiful, beautiful song. So, the first UU service that I attended was at our fellowship now 1 year ago. After hearing the opening words of welcome, I remember thinking two things. One, I want to say those someday. Two, I'm home. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that profoundly peaceful sense of finding your spiritual home. Remember that with me for a moment. Imagine that initial passion of wanting to learn more about your new home, become family with its inhabitants, and grow within their loving and supportive embrace. For many of us, the fellowship and other UU communities we've been a part of have sustained and nurtured us. But unfortunately, despite our message of welcome, this has not been the case for everyone who has felt that call of home. Today, I want to share with you the stories of two people in our history who have felt that call, only to be kicked out of our doors again and again. Their names are Reverend Egbert Ethelred Brown and Reverend Yvonne Sion, both persons of color who dreamed of creating integrated and innovative Unitarian congregations. Reverend Ethelred Brown, a Jamaican native born in 1875, found his spiritual home in Unitarianism at the age of 16 after reading a sermon from William Ellery Channing. When he was 32, he realized it was time to pursue his spiritual call to ministry. He was accepted into Meadville Theological School in 1907 with the warning from its president that there were no Black Unitarian churches and white people needed white ministers. Still, he persisted. And after his ordination, he attempted for years to form a church in Jamaica, but was regularly denied support from both the British and the American Unitarian associations. This continual lack of support made it impossible for him to spread the message of Unitarianism in Jamaica. So with small funds from the Union of Unitarian Women of England, he and his wife traveled to New York, where he became America's first Black Unitarian minister. In Harlem, he attempted to organize the first interracial Unitarian congregation, where the emotional spirituality of old was replaced by his dream of having both a temple and a forum, where debates and speakers were hosted that often focused on issues of race. Despite the lack of support given him by the AUA, he remained a fierce supporter of Unitarianism throughout his life and ministry, because he believed in its ability to empower the Black community through reason, freedom, and social justice. He dreamed of a day when Unitarian churches would be integrated from the pulpit outwards. Although the AUA eventually realized the need to address race relations within our nation and denomination, the Harlem Unitarian Church was ignored as a place for potential growth, and so it perished. But I wonder, what would we look like now if Reverend Brown had been listened to rather than made invisible? 30 years later, Reverend Yvonne Sion proved that the dream of integrated churches from the pulpit to the pews was still a long way out for Unitarians. While in college, she attended a Unitarian service where she recounts that the minister spoke to my deepest beliefs about God and religion. But she found no welcome from the congregation and felt as though she were invisible. After a vibrant professional career, including university work as well as foreign relations, this brilliant woman felt called to ministry, specifically a contemporary healing ministry within Unitarian Universalism. After being ordained, she awaited her placement in a congregation for about 8 years, while taking on short-term jobs and speaking engagements to support her 3 children. Despite the UUA's acclaimed desire for diversity, no congregation would accept her. Although eventually the ministry that she was running on her own became UU affiliated as a Sojourner Truth congregation for Unitarian Universalists, like Reverend Brown, she was never given enough support to grow the ministry, and the financial and political issues overcame the spiritual resources of the congregation. So we ask ourselves now in 2020, who is welcome here? It is one thing to say we desire diversity, but another to allow it to transform us from within. And yet still another to support those whose visions of UUism may look different from ours. How do we honor the courage and tenacity of those who loved the message of our chosen faith, despite the ambivalence of its followers? How do we make our home the home for all who feel its call in their hearts and minds? I have no concrete answers, but my hope is that we actively make our spiritual home a place of humility, growth, and true interconnection. And that work begins with each of us.
Thank you so very much, Haley. That was really beautiful, and that difficult, even to hear that difficult history. And I really appreciated the questions you posed. We're going to sing again, and this is a song from put together a video of Dr. Glenn Thomas Rideout. He's the Director of Worship and Music at the First Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And it has that same energy of movement. So I'm going to invite you again to let your body move during this music as a way to perhaps expand your own feeling of what worship and being together in fellowship can feel like.
Walk together, children, don't you get too weary. Walk together, children, don't you get too weary. Walk together, children, don't you get too weary. There's a great coming in the promised land. Walk together, children, don't you get too weary. Walk together, children, don't you get too weary. Walk together, children, don't you get too weary. There's a great coming in the promised land. Talk together, children, don't you get too weary. Talk together, children, don't you get too weary. Talk together, children, don't you get too weary. There's a great camp meeting in the promised land. Sing and never tire. Sing and never tire. Sing and never tire. There's a great camp meeting in the promised land. Sing together, children, don't you get too weary. Sing together, children, don't you get too weary. Sing together, children, don't you get too weary. There's a great camp meeting in the promised land. Shout together, children, don't you get too weary. Shout together, children, don't you get too weary. Shout together, children, don't you get too weary. There's a great camp meeting in the promised land. There's a promise and never tire. Sing and never tire. Sing and never tire. There's a great camp meeting in the promised land. Talk together, children, don't you get too weary. Talk together, children, don't you get too weary. Sing together, children, don't you get too weary. Shout together, children, don't you get too weary. Walk together, children, don't you get too weary. Talk together, children, in the promised land. There's a great camp meeting in the promised land. There's a great camp meeting in the promised land. There's a great together, children, don't you get too weary. Together, children, in the promised land. There's a great together, children, in the promised land. There's a great together, children, in the promised land. There's a great together, keep on walking. There's a great camp meeting in the promised land. Keep together, children, keep on walking. There's a great camp meeting in the promised land. Keep together, keep on singing. There's a great camp meeting in the promised land. Keep on shouting. There's a great camp meeting in the promised land. Keep on walking. There's a great camp meeting in the promised land. Keep on walking. There's a great camp meeting in the promised land. Keep on singing. There's a great camp meeting in the promised land. Keep on shouting. There's a great gasoline in the promised land. Keep on walk together, children, don't you get to we walk together, children, don't you get to we walk together, children, don't you get to we. There's a great company in the promised land. Sing and never tire, sing and never tire, sing and never tire. There's a great camp meeting in the promised land. Walk together, children, don't you get weary. Walk together, children, don't you get weary. Walk together, children, don't you get weary. Shout together, children, don't you get weary. Walk.
Wow, Dr. Rideout, huh? Something about that guy. He's like a mix between Bobby McFerrin and Paul Robeson. That's kind of what I think. I'm going with Paul Robeson and Bobby McFerrin. So we have a contemporary and a historical figure, but I just enjoy his music so much, and I particularly want to lift out from that piece that we need to not get weary. And this has been a wearying time, has it not, between the pandemic, or really the pandemics, plural, of racial injustice, the pandemic of the political upheaval of all of you, which I share in with you. I still vote in the US, and so I'm watching with great interest what's coming up in November, and then the pandemic of COVID-19. So it's been a hard time to sing and never tire, and yet we need to keep singing that song of freedom, the song of love, the song of hope, perhaps now more than ever. So it's wonderful to be with you this morning. I want to thank my dear friend Lydia and the entire congregation for having me this morning. I'm going to begin my message this morning. I usually call my sermons a message. One of my mentors in ministry always really made it sure that I was trying to be clear about having a message. So hopefully I have a message to bring to you this morning. And my message begins with a reading from the report of the Commission on Institutional Change. I understand that many of your congregational leaders are going to be reading that amazing volume. That report, for those of you who are not familiar, is the culmination of a multi-year, oh, see, Reverend Lydia's got it right there, culmination of a multi-year examination of our Unitarian Universalist culture when it comes to welcoming diversity, especially welcoming those with marginalized identities. The report is entitled Widening the Circle, and this small excerpt which I share with you this morning is from their section Exploring Theology. And I quote, "Our congregations often have the characteristics of elite social clubs rather than of religious institutions. As a religious institution and not a social club, we are bound in covenant to a set of beliefs and aspirations. Our inclusive, pluralist principles allow individuals to find their own paths to truth within our Unitarian Universalist frame. Yet often individuals do not see that our faith community is held together by a set of common communal values. When individualism is not in balance with communal good, individualism can become toxic to our religious community. And if we wish to preserve Unitarian, Universalist, and Unitarian Universalist traditions, our conversations and research suggest that our congregations must center themselves in the communal and covenantal, and not primarily the comfort and familiarity of the social club." End quote. The Story of Us is the title of my message this morning. The Story of Us. History is complicated, or should I say, awash in complexity. Both our own personal histories and our collective histories as nations and communities and neighborhoods. The more you dig into the story of how a place was founded, or whose narrative about a place or time is the most often told, the more you discover just how partial or how dictated by only a small group of quote unquote winners that story often is. A few examples of this occur to me right off the bat. The first is the Bible. I remember when I was in undergraduate school studying the Hebrew Bible, I was stunned to discover just how many of the different writers of the biblical text had been involved and how they had all filtered the information and the stories through their own particular angle of vision. There are 4 major writers of the Hebrew scripture, but each of them were trying to get their winning narrative into the book that we now see as the Bible. And who got to write the story dramatically changed how it was told and which pieces were included or left out or emphasized. The second example that occurs to me right away as someone who has transplanted herself to Canada is the Indigenous stories and voices that I have learned so much about in my decade of living in Canada, about the complexity of what seemed so simple to me at one time. I was at a lecture with Indigenous folks and a longtime settler to these lands who was telling a story about how he had lived in the Vancouver area, which is just across the water from me, for a long time. And this settler, this white settler, said it was only as he began to talk with some of the Indigenous people from that land that he realized that just because Vancouver had been his hometown for 30 years didn't make it more his home than it was the home of the peoples who had inhabited that land for thousands of years. He said that the very notion of home, of whether land can be owned, of what it means to be of and from a place, was so much more textured ever since that conversation that he had had. And I've been trying to take that to heart. What does it mean to be of a place, to be from a place, to call it home? Even the best histories, and don't we Unitarian Universalists like to think that our history is one of the better ones, are filled with both shining achievements and moments as well as heartbreaking cautionary tales like the 2 that Haley shared with us this morning. Our history is filled with prophetic people whose lives both beckon with examples of ways forward and warn us of missteps and short-sightedness. We can see as we look back the stories of amazing people who did so much good in the world and who lived lives of integrity and meaning, who tried to make the world a better place in so many different ways. And we can see as well institutional mistakes, harm done, careers ruined. In short, we can see the places where our forebears made choices that have kept Unitarian Universalism largely white, well-educated, middle class, and yes, reluctant to change. So this morning, I want us to each think about how we fit into this larger story of us. Each of us has many facets to the way we fit into any community, but I want you to focus this morning with me on how you and your you-ness fits into your spiritual community, fits into Boulder Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. How is which part of you you bring to the fellowship, or the version that you hold out and hold up, seen? How is it encouraged or pushed, or sometimes perhaps even coddled? How do you show up in your spiritual community? And which you do you want to bring and embody in your place of worship and community? My history of UUism, my version of fitting into this us, starts a long time ago. As Lydia said, I've been at this for a while. I'm actually one of the lifelong Unitarian Universalists. Some people like to call us cradle UUs. One of the 10% or so of people who are Unitarian Universalists who grew up in this faith tradition. My mother found Unitarian Universalism as a single mom when I was about 2 years old. And so this is the only faith tradition that I have ever known. And she sought it out as a community of connection and care for both herself and for her daughter. And this tradition has given me so much over the decades. I have been connected to people I wouldn't have met otherwise who mean the world to me through it. So many people that I hold dear. I've shared so many moments of beauty and meaning over the course of my vocational life and throughout all of my friendships, more than I can count. Times that have moved me to tears, brought huge smiles to my face. Unitarian Universalism has given me my life's work and a sense of purpose. This is what I am here for and what I am meant to do with the one life that I have. So in short, I can't imagine my life without Unitarian Universalism. At the same time, Unitarian Universalism has had me bear witness to many cringeworthy moments over those decades. It has also made me work harder than I should have had to find my voice and claim my truth. All of which leads me to sort of the central point of my message to you this morning, which is that our us, our story of us, needs to expand. It needs to be more flexible than it has ever been before and more open than it currently is, if it is to not only survive as a 21st century faith, but if it is to live up to the ideals that it professes. We profess, and our ancestors before us professed, that we were an open and inclusive and spirit-giving and life-affirming force in the world. What might that look like? Let me elaborate. The congregation that I grew up in suburban Philadelphia, was a lovely place. It had a beautiful, attractive building, which I'm sure your new building is going to be beautiful and attractive. It was on a beautiful piece of land with a nice big yard I remember running around in, and a playground for the kids. It was also a very homogeneous community. The music was almost always classical. The sermon was almost always like a high quality academic lecture. And the members were mostly of the same class and race, with a few exceptions. It was lovely, and it was too comfortable, too conforming. There was little room for emotion or messiness or anything that could have been perceived as challenging what was. More than this is what we do, it felt very much like this is how we are, how we behave in this community, which quite easily leads to this is who we are, right? This is what we do becomes this is how we are, becomes this is who we are. So how will the story of us have to change and expand in order to be more deeply inclusive? How can we welcome people to be more than stereotypes and move beyond the spaces that we have created for them to neatly fit into our assumptions? How much are we willing to make mistakes and make apologies and commit to being changed, being better? Two final stories stick with me. We had a guest music director come to our congregation here in Victoria a few years ago. He's a person of color, and after leading our choir through a weekend workshop and leading them through the music on a Sunday morning and singing a solo gospel piece of music as part of our service, I was talking with him after the service, appreciating so much what he had brought to our community, when a member of the congregation came up to him and said, "You remind me of so many of the people that I knew back in Toronto. I just love Black music." Ouch. Ouch, because Toronto was code for people of color, multiculturalism. Ouch, because where was his individuality? He was just filling this role that we wanted him to fill, I suppose, in her mind. Where was loving the music without racializing it? Something like, "Gospel music speaks to my heart," or "I was really moved by your performance this morning." My second story is my own story of serving in Washington, D.C. As Lydia mentioned, I spent 7 years as the associate minister of the amazing congregation All Souls Church in Washington, D.C. I will be forever grateful for my time there. It's just an amazing congregation, and if you're ever in Washington, D.C., I highly recommend worshiping with the good folks at All Souls. The music and the spirit of that place is just alive. And yet there were ways during my time there in which it was a real struggle for me, especially the first few years of my 7 years among them. All Souls is much more diverse than most Unitarian Universalist congregations. I'm not sure what their percentages and things are now, but I would say probably about a quarter of the congregation are people of color, of various different colors. And yet during my first couple of years there, I felt pressure and expectations from all sides of the community in ways that didn't leave much space or room for me to be me. The folks of color in the congregation, especially the African American folks in the congregation, wanted me to represent them in a very particular way. They had a vision of what my ministry should look like, and they didn't want me to make mistakes, quite frankly, as they were sure that they would end up reflecting poorly on them, right? They wanted me to be kind of the model Black person for them. The white folks in the congregation wanted me to make the congregation more diverse by my mere presence among them. I was to be a savior of sorts, leading them to the promised land of the beloved community they longed to be, but wanted someone else to do the work to become. Neither group wanted me to simply be me, to bring what I had to bring, to say what I needed to say, to share what I saw. It took probably the first 3 full years of my 7 years of ministry there before I was established enough to be truly seen on my own merits as a full and flawed minister who had particular gifts and weaknesses that were not the stuff of projection or expectation. And isn't that what we want for everyone in our congregations and communities? The chance to be fully themselves and to grow and change alongside us, bringing us right along with them through the ups and downs of being human. Unitarian Universalism has changed a great deal since I was a kid. 4 decades ago now. And yet, it hasn't changed enough, quite frankly. I still see so many echoes and outlines and impacts of who we have been on who we still are in ways that I don't think are constructive. We still need to embrace our history and our theology more than we do, but we need to modernize it as well. We need to fit it into a 21st century world that is global and multicultural. If we don't, we will find ourselves a provincial and limited tradition, only able to meet the needs of a homogeneous and aging slice of the whole of humanity. Let's not go extinct because we cling too strongly to only having our own personal needs met, to the social club mentality of which the Commission on Institutional Change spoke. That is a very limited club at that. Let's not go extinct because we refuse to grow and change with the times, refuse to rise to the occasion. And let's not go extinct by refusing to live up to our principles. For how can you honor the inherent worth and dignity of all people while only allowing some in your doors? How can you say you feel the truth of your interdependence while pushing for your congregation to only do what feeds you musically or spiritually? The prophetic people of our past, the Ethelred Browns, the Yvonne Sions, and those in our midst now, the Glenn Thomas Rideouts, and the many, many more, are calling us to change, calling us to be open-hearted and willing to try new things, to be uncomfortable, to make mistakes, to apologize and to start again. Will we listen? Will we heed their call, or will we repeat the mistakes of the past, saying no in one way or another? I am hopeful that this is the time that we will move forward as a community, embracing everyone who comes and being willing to be changed by the gifts that each person brings. May that be so for your community and mine. May it be so for all of us. Blessed be, and amen.
Oh, Sean, I thank you so much for your beautiful, tender, and prophetic message. So thank you so much for being here with us today. We're moving into our offering time, and I remind us that each year we remind ourselves, each week rather, we remind ourselves of the abundance of our lives and of this community by giving 1/2 of our plate away to those organizations that share our values. Today, as we did last Sunday, we will be giving our plate to the Boulder County branch of the NAACP. That's the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And its goal is to ensure political, educational, social, and economic equality of all persons and to eliminate race-based discrimination. The Boulder County branch, which was chartered in 2017, has already made a big impact in this town. It aims to further this mission by working with agencies through the county in education, community engagement, and criminal justice. You can find out more by going to the website listed as our half plate recipient slide, which you'll shortly see. And also following this service, Judy Houston, who is the Vice President of the NAACP, will be here for a presentation, and you will see the link to join her on that Zoom room following this at the end of the service. And as we listen to this morning's music during the offering, I also invite you to reflect on this question and comment in the chat window if you wish. And this week's question is, what do you bring to the story of us? Thank you so much for your generosity and for your sharing. I always enjoy reading the chat during this time of the service. For the work of this fellowship, which is bringing love, reason, compassion, and justice into the world, and for the work of the Boulder County chapter of the NAACP, we gratefully receive and dedicate your offerings.
And now we sing.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
And now, although we're running a little late this morning, I invite us into our time of community connection, our time of sacred sharing. I will let you know how we do that. And when you do, whether by voice or chat, please tell us your name and where you live, and then briefly let us know what's in your heart today. And then I will place a stone in our sacred waters on your behalf. So if you'd like to share a joy or concern, raise your hand in the participants window, and our tech usher, Don Price, will unmute you, or you might see a pop-up window asking you to unmute yourself. And of course, if you prefer, you can always put your joy or concern in the chat window by sending sending a chat to everyone on the everyone bar. And then Don will read the chats that you send out loud at the end. Oh, beloveds, it is so good to be together, even across cyberspace. It is good to be together. As our joys and concerns always show us joy and woe, beauty and injustice, it's all woven so finely in our lives. These are challenging times. Fires are burning. The real fires, and the fires of justice, the flames of injustice as well. May we recognize our capacities, and with humility recognize also our flaws, the places that we could do better, the places where we could respond sooner. May we take the lessons of our history, the beautiful lessons of a people committed to incredible ideals, and the painful ones which show us all we have to learn. May we take all of those and go forward with love and compassion. And may all those who are suffering now, whether physically or with mental health issues or economically, all those in fear, all of those with COVID and who have lost people to COVID, may all of them feel the love and compassion of this congregation and have that provide even a bit of solace for their journey. Beloveds, it is good to be together. We need one another. We need one another. Our promise and our prayer always be to journey together in love, compassion, and justice. Blessed be. And I invite you now to extinguish the chalice you have at home if you've lit one, and also to, as I extinguish the chalice from our fellowship. You can say the words along with me if you'd like. We extinguish this chalice, but not the warmth of love, the light of truth, nor the energy of action. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again. We have one last piece of music that we invite you to be a part of, to remind us again of the great traditions that come from Africa that have infused our Unitarian Universalist culture.
light of God. We are moving in the light of God. We are moving in the light of God. We are moving, we are moving, we are moving in the light of God. We are moving, we are moving, we are moving in the light of God. We are singing 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 in the light of God. We are singing, singing, we are singing. We are singing in the light of God. We are singing, singing, we are singing. We are singing in the light of God. Siya may kukanyen kwenkos. 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 Siya
Beloveds, as we prepare to leave this service, I want to invite you to join me in what has become our tradition up here in Victoria. Before I go join my congregation and move to a different room in my house and virtually join those good folks up here, we've taken the habit of placing one hand on our hearts and reaching the other hand out toward the webcam screen and taking a deep breath and looking in the eyes of as many people as we can see on that screen. And thinking, what good souls, what dear ones, we can move like we do when we see a humba. We can move like the willow tree in the wind. We can bend and change. We can move so that we can make more space. Like on a crowded transit bus in the big city, we can make more room for more people at the table of love that we call Unitarian Universalism. May we do it because without all those other good souls who want to be here with us, oh, we would miss them. We would be the sorer and the poorer for it. So let's make some more room. Can I get an amen? Thank you for being here. May you be blessed in your movements and in your holding close and dear all that you love. I wish you love and hope and peace in the days to come. Blessed be, and amen.
Thank you so much, Shauna, for being with us. I so appreciate your willingness to join us this morning. So on behalf of the whole congregation, I wholeheartedly thank you.